If you're a photographer, this episode is for you. It's time to sit down and talk about an image rights question that I see pop up time and time again. What is a licensing agreement? When do you absolutely need one as a photographer? And how can you legally protect your images with a licensing agreement, whether that's exclusive or non-exclusive? If you're not a photographer, you know the drill with this podcast. I'm never going to beat around the bush and try to get you to listen to an episode that doesn't pertain to you. So, all non-photographers, peace. I'll chat with you in the next episode. But if you are a photographer, I know you work so hard to get the perfect shot and create the perfect lighting scenario with that composition and the lens choice that you decided on. You name it. Like all of that goes into the images that you deliver to your clients. You tell a story unlike any other, and the amount of post-processing work that goes in after the photos are taken before they reach your client's inbox is astronomical, which means I know the frustration then down the line when someone uses your work without consent for their own advertising when they aren't your client. They didn't pay you for those photos. Think here like a venue using your image on a big magazine advertisement and you open it up without knowing, and then they didn't pay you for the rights to use it. A licensing agreement can help you with this issue. And in this situation in particular, which I mentioned is this frequently asked question we see inside our free TLP Facebook community, is photographers have a hard time deciding what to do in this situation. Should you just hand over all of your work for free? And if you did want to have some sort of legal agreement and licensing compensation in place with the vendors you work with at an event, how do you even go about that without causing friction or making vendors upset that they don't just get your images complimentary, even though they do from other photographers? Now, although people are split here in the photography world, and I know vendors often work together, that does not mean that you have to give your copyrighted works and images to vendors for free. And it doesn't mean that you continually have to do that even if they've received them free from you in the past. It also does not mean that these vendors automatically get to use your photos for whatever they wish. Maybe you put boundaries on that. And even if they say that they can do whatever they want to do with your photos because their own contract says that with the client, it's not their images. So without further ado, legal pagers and photographers, it is time to delve into today's topic. You're listening to the Legal Paige podcast, where we chat about life and business with a legal twist. I'm Paige, attorney and photographer helping online businesses and creatives tackle their business dreams without breaking out in hives. No more legal mumbo jumbo. This podcast features simple, bite-sized advice that'll have you legally legit in no time. Are you ready? Let's get started. As a reminder, before we get into this episode, I am legally obligated to give my disclaimer. I am an attorney, but I am not your attorney. All legal information I talk about in this episode is intended for the masses and a large variety of different businesses. Please seek out another attorney in your city and home state if you need specific legal advice related to your unique business. Okay, let's get back to it. Alrighty, photographers. So first and foremost, before we get into the nitty-gritty of licensing agreements, let's get the heavy legal question out of the way. Do you as a photographer have the sole copyright ownership over your images? Yes, 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 100 times over yes. Under United States law, specifically the Copyright Act of 1976 and Title USC 17, original works of authorship are protected by you as the photographer the minute you click that shutter. This, of course, includes visual works such as photography under the Copyright Act. Yes, it literally lists photography under there. So copyright protection exists the moment your work is created and fixed in a tangible form that can be seen either directly in like a physical form or with the aid of a machine or a device, such as a digital or film camera and computer. And of course, film cameras there are going to have the film being processed and then uploaded as a digital image, usually to a computer and sent back to you. And that's what you would give your clients. Thus, this means you have copyright ownership automatically over all of the photographs that you create the moment that shutter button is clicked. So with all of this in mind, photographers, vendors should not be using your photos without your permission. In fact, no one should be using your photos for specifically commercial reasons and commercial profit without your permission. This is considered the utmost form of copyright infringement, and let me tell you, it's against the law. So to help protect yourself from infringement, we here at the Legal Paige recommend that you make it known to every single vendor that you work with that they can only use your photos if they license them from you first, or if you give them some sort of license. Now that you understand your copyright ownership rights, let's discuss whether it's wise to share your photographs with other vendors at a wedding or event. I need to be clear here that I'm not your marketing advisor on this topic. As I'm sure you've seen in online chats and communities such as Facebook groups, people have a wide array of opinions on this. And if you say hired a coach in your photography niche, they might very well say, heck yes, send over all your images to vendors for free to build out referrals and goodwill and boost your reputation. And I'm not here to say don't do it. What I am here is to be that other little bird on your opposite shoulder, telling you that it's also really important to look at the legal what ifs. That is what this podcast is all about and why you're tuning in here today. Thus, I really do want to say that I don't discredit that sharing your photos with vendors can be a good marketing tactic. But legally, it means that you're freely giving licenses to use your photos to these vendors without signing an actual licensing agreement if you're just sending them the gallery and that's it. Some vendors could then think that they can literally do whatever they want to do with these photos, or they could use them and not credit you. Or they could put your logo, say, on a huge billboard to promote their venue, again, without credit or additional compensation for a type of marketing platform like that. You might be sitting there thinking, all right, Paige, I got it. Sharing my photos with vendors is good for my marketing, but there are also some potential legal issues that could pop up if I do it the wrong way. Which brings me to the most important part of this podcast. And if you only get one thing out of this episode, it's this. Have licensing agreements in your back pocket at all times. It is uber important to have these types of agreements in your legal toolkit so that you can utilize them when the time comes. Now, there are two types of licensing agreements you should be considering investing into so that you can protect your brand and your photos. And those are a non-exclusive licensing agreement and an exclusive licensing agreement. And these are like really simple kind of 1-pager, 2-pager documents, but they lay out the boundaries surrounding your license to use these photographs to each vendor that signs them. Let me discuss the differences between these two. A non-exclusive licensing agreement allows you to give a limited license to a vendor to use your photos for commercial purposes. It does not give that vendor sole use of the photos, but rather it gives you, I would say, the freedom to sell or distribute your photos to multiple vendors for multiple reasons. That way, it's up to you. You have the control here. You are the copyright owner after all, as we discussed. You get to determine how many photos you want to allow each vendor to use for commercial purposes. Do they only get 5 to 10 of their choice? Are they only allowed to publish them, say, on their website and social media? And then any other purposes you would charge a larger fee for, say like a billboard or a magazine spread or things along those lines. For example, let's say you're a photographer and your clients hired a wedding planner and they held their wedding at this beautiful vineyard. After your client's wedding, both the wedding planner and now the vineyard that sells and labels hundreds of thousands of bottles of wine wanted the pictures you use in order to use them on their website. It's flattering, right? You love getting these requests. And of course, you want to license your photos to both of them because it means more exposure for your business. So in this instant, you can do it one of two ways. You can send them a non-exclusive licensing agreement whereby they agree to use your photos the way you will allow them to for free or for a small fee. And it's a non-exclusive license because multiple businesses are getting a license to use from you, not just one person or one business, hence the term, quote, non-exclusive, end quote. All this to say, a non-exclusive licensing agreement, it's not exclusive to just one business getting that license to use. You then have the power to send those photos to even more vendors, not just the wedding planner and the vineyard owner here. You can send it to the florist and to the rental company and to the DJ, so on and so forth, the hair and makeup artists. Now stick with me because I am going to go into which one of those options, the free or for a small fee, is better suited for your unique business in a bit. Now, flip side, if a venue wants exclusive use of the photos, then there's a way to do that through, you guessed it, an exclusive licensing agreement. An exclusive licensing agreement should always have a large fee attached to it because you're giving that vendor or that business sole use of your photos and no one else, oftentimes including you, can use them. It's kind of like a true transfer of copyright or assignment of copyright to somebody. Maybe you still own the original copyright ownership, but you're the exclusive licensing agreement is no holds bar. It's only for this person. Another example here. If your clients are Kourtney Kardashian and Travis Barker and People Magazine wants the right to your images, your wedding images, and does not want any other magazine to cover the wedding, you would probably present them with a very hefty exclusive licensing agreement with written permission of your clients through a model release. Remember, that has to be in your agreement to your clients, and they're probably involved too. Then you would charge a much larger fee to People Magazine because you're licensing exclusive rights to them, meaning you're not going to get additional income from any other vendor or magazines or businesses for giving them these photos to use. I'm not going to get too much into the weeds here, but just note that exclusive licensing agreements usually involve lawyers. It's kind of hard for someone to be able to use an exclusive licensing agreement unless it's for somebody that you're comfortable sending them kind of that draft agreement to. But lawyers oftentimes get involved because of compensation and the boundaries surrounding that exclusive licensing agreement. For example, an entire gallery, if you got to send them the entire gallery and they could use whatever images they wish, that would be a lot of money. We're talking here tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. But a low to middle figure number for, say, use of your best 15 to 20 images is probably completely reasonable for situations like that. In most instances, though, if you're not shooting, say, celebrities or politicians or public figures, you're probably always going to use a non-exclusive licensing agreement. All right, got it? Exclusive and non-exclusive licensing agreements. You guys probably, for the most part, are going to use non-exclusive licensing agreements. Now, back to the question of, should you send the licensing agreement with a fee attached or complimentary? My take is that you should license your images to all vendors that you wish to license them to with a fee. And here's why. Again, remember, I'm lawyer Paige here, not your marketing guru. So it's up to you to kind of balance my legal suggestions with your own business morals, values, and, marketing ventures. And I can telepathically hear you saying, wait, Paige, those vendors are my friends. Isn't it more publicity for me and better in the long run? Why wouldn't I just give them all the images for free, right? My answer to that is twofold. First, It's great when you have a good relationship with your vendors. And there may be vendors out there where you feel like you get enough business from them to justify not charging a fee at all. If that's the case, then absolutely, you do you, my friend. Don't charge a fee. But I do need you to still make sure they sign a licensing agreement and get that in place so that this person or this, good relationship vendor that you have knows the conditions of sharing your photos to the world. And this is where most photographers miss the mark. They forget about this critical contract component to their marketing idea of sharing photos. And secondly, lawyer Paige is saying, yeah, publicity by a vendor is great, but they may not be sharing the photos the way that they should be, and it actually harms your brand more than it helps. And this is like a brand protection legal argument here that I'm bringing up. It goes back to this vendor using the photos without crediting or putting filters on your photos or cropping photos so like your specific composition that you created isn't there anymore. All of this goes into the goodwill and the overall brand that you're projecting to the world. And I know I keep bringing this up, but that situation where they're using a huge photo of yours in a prominent place like a billboard or a TV ad or a magazine ad where you could also get potential clients from, but then they still never credited you because they didn't know that that was a boundary within the licensing agreement you signed. And then if they don't, it's a breach of contract and you would still be able to kind of garner some compensation or damages from them. All to say, when vendors don't have boundaries on how they are utilizing your images through a licensing agreement, it will hurt your overall brand and all of those layperson views that come upon your business from them misusing your images. Here's the deal, okay? Stick with me. Having a licensing agreement not only makes your vendors take you seriously because you're like, oh yeah, I'll give this to you, no problem. But can you just sign this agreement so that we're both on the same page here before I just give you access to download all these photos and do what you wish with them? But a licensing agreement also allows you that control, right? How your work is being perceived by the world. So please just stop sending vendors your photos in online galleries with a link and a list of all the other vendors' Instagram accounts and website. Still do that. But first, send them a licensing agreement with your conditions upon using those photos. That's literally the gateway to getting access to your professional photos. Make sense? And as I mentioned before, it's likely going to be different for each vendor you work with, okay? So some you have ongoing relationships with, right? You've worked probably 10, 20, 50 weddings with this particular vendor. But then there are some that you have no idea who they are, right? They've just popped up on the scene. Or maybe you've heard word of mouth, but you don't really know what they are like to work with. You have the control as the photographer who owns these images to decide how you want to go about licensing your images to each vendor. And then you can kind of analyze your unique relationship with each of them. So some photographers may get a list of all the vendors involved from the wedding or event from the client, right? Around a month or so or a couple weeks before the wedding or event. That's what a lot of people do. And then once they have that information, they contact the vendors and introduce themselves, talk about prep for the event. And then this would also be the prime opportunity to let them know that they may be able to license professional photos from you as the photographer. Maybe at that point, some you give it to them for free in exchange for a referral or a backlink, right? Depending on your relationship with them. And if you like them a lot and you like working with them and you want to continue to have weddings and events with them. But maybe some you charge a small licensing fee to, say around, $50 to $100 for use of 10 of your images. And that, that would make sense. Maybe some you have no idea who they are, right? Once you get this list from your clients, and you don't even want to give them that opportunity to use your images until after you work with them and see if you even want your photos associated with that vendor and that type of business. You got to be cautious there. Don't just give it out to new people because they're going to blast it and you think it's going to boost your brand. It actually might hurt more than help. Sometimes it's better to do all of this before, right? To talk to them about licensing professional photos from you before the event, because then you can send images over right away after the event. And then all these vendors use your photos that week after the event, bringing ultimately more eyes to your photography business, right? It's better for them to not post like their iPhone photos or smartphone photos. It's better for them to post your professional photos relating back to the event that they just did last weekend. And then in some instances, maybe you want to wait to offer that licensing agreement until after, as I discussed. But the key is no matter what situation you're in, you're sending them a licensing agreement before the wedding or event, or you're sending it after the event and you're allowing them to use photos. You never send images or a gallery until they've signed your licensing agreement and agree to your rules on using your images. Okay, finally, let's get into the sticky situation as a photographer that you've likely ran into before, or you've heard of, or you're scared of. A vendor claims in their contract with the client that they have access to all the professional photos for free. So, for example, a florist may have a contract with the client that says they get access to all of the professional photos, and the client must send them the link from your professional photo gallery. The link the clients would send directly to the florist, as in they can automatically use them without your permission. Key here. What do you do in that situation when you figure out that somebody has your photos and you never sent them the link? You never gave them permission. You're like, what the heck? Why do they have my photos? Why are they using them? This is a situation I hope you never have to experience, but honestly, the chances are really high. This happens all the time. So I just want to make sure that you're legally legit when this comes up. And taking a step back here before I tell you like what I would do and the steps to take, think about this. A venue would never let you use its premises to do like a styled shoot or to do photos without your permission, right? And probably a fee too. A florist also wouldn't just do florals for you and let you change everything and do everything you want with them. They would probably at least charge you a wholesale pricing to create the florals for a styled shoot, with specific boundaries in place surrounding, like you can't touch them, you can't rearrange them. Like, this is my work of art. This is my copyrighted work. And a DJ just isn't going to give you their equipment to use for your own event for free without your permission. You can't just like walk in and take it, right? They, as in all these vendors, shouldn't expect the opposite from you. They shouldn't expect to just get photographs. That is your work product. That's your work product. Now, offering vendors the opportunity to license your photos from you, it doesn't mean you give up your copyright rights. Like I said, instead, you are just going to protect your work and all this work product that you've done through post-processing and editing from unlawful infringement by giving these vendors the opportunities to license your photos from you, either right off the bat prior to the wedding or after, right after the wedding or event. You have to set that expectation of the value of your work product, and setting that expectation through a licensing agreement is really important. Now, to answer the question of what do you do when a vendor somehow gets your photos and you never gave them permission? And you probably know it's coming from the clients, right? Like, where else are they getting this link? You only send the link to your clients. So, no, legally speaking, your clients don't actually have the legal authority to be bound under that contract because they don't have the right to license your copyrighted works. They can't sign off on that. So they can't give your photos to other people without your permission. They have to seek your permission first. And if they did sign a contract with, say, the venue or the florist that stated that they had to give them the link, in the eyes of the law, that clause would be totally void. That's like copyright infringement up the wazoo. So in that situation, it might be smart for you to probably first alert the client to what's going on. If they did sign a contract stating that their professional photographer would share photos with this particular vendor, your clients should probably know that that clause cannot be legally enforced. And it would probably also deter your clients from sending this link to anybody else who asks. You gotta tell them. Like, they just don't know. Be super kind here, right? We're not trying to rock the boat. You love your clients, they love you. Like, just bring this up and let them know what's going on, because you don't want this particular vendor then, if you only reach out to them, coming back to your clients and saying like things. You want to be the first person to alert them. After you've alerted the client, then what's going on, you have to make a decision on how you want to address the vendor. I would say address them kindly, but firmly and in writing. So this is via email or a letter, probably email. Let them know that you are the sole copyright owner of all of your photos and that your client actually had no authority to contract that right away. It is important here that the vendor really understands this, because they may think that they can contractually obligate clients to do whatever they wish, but they need to understand really how copyright ownership works and that your clients were not actually given that license to freely give to third parties. You never agreed to that in your relationship, in your contract with the client. So now whether you want to share those photos with the vendor and like continue that relationship is up to you. Here's like a few hypothetical actions you could take as the photographer. Marketing wise, right? It's a good idea to probably share a few photos with that vendor. They already have your photos. It's already up. Asking them to take it down is probably not fun. So maybe you're like, in this particular instance, you can use that complimentary. But here's a licensing agreement, because this is what I make my clients sign. I will let you use this photo or this photo on your social media, but then it really puts parameters around them not being able to use those photos for any other purposes. And then again, if you do share your photos for free, make sure you're getting some type of benefit from it. Even if it's just more exposure from your business, they have to like link up and credit your business. Or maybe, if it's a venue or a florist, maybe there's some type of like scratch your back, I'll scratch mine type of situation. Like, you use this photo without permission. I guess I'll give you permission this time. I guess I'll let you use it complimentary. But would like alert them to the fact that it's copyright infringement. And then also say, could we remedy this situation by you providing X to me now, whatever that X may be, right? And you can decide with your marketing manager or other, marketing experts or coaches in the field on the best way to go about that. Like, how can you get something from this yucky situation? And then I would say that you, of course, have the vendor sign a non-exclusive licensing agreement. But then explain to them that they could get access to the whole gallery for a larger fee. And if you do this, you just want to gently remind them that you still own the copyright of the photos and what that kind of non-exclusive license looks like, because they already used and did some stuff with your photos without your permission. So you just have to keep reiterating that through your relationship with this person. At the end of the day, like, I always suggest kindness kills. Like, it works and you're going to come out on the other side better because of it. But just remember, legally, you always have the option not to share at all. And you always have the option to like file a potential copyright infringement claim. And maybe you don't even like this vendor and you don't want to be associated with them. And that's fine. That's where you have choices here. And you can tell them, take it down. I don't want this associated. You are in full copyright violation here. And then you can kind of do some DCMA takedowns there. And then, okay, last but not least, I know this episode's getting long, but it's important. One other tip from me: make sure that your clients have signed a model release from you. I briefly mentioned that, but I just wanted to point it out here at the end one more time. Because you can't license the photos of these people in your images to third parties, also known as vendors, other businesses, without their permission. So most photography contracts, like your existing photography contract, should already have a model release clause in it. All of our contract templates at thelegalpage.com, if you have one of ours, they have it in there. So you're good to go. And we make it very broad, like overarching. You can do whatever you want with these photos and send it to whatever third parties you want. But if you don't, then just make sure your clients, before you do any of this exclusive, non-exclusive licensing agreement stuff with third parties, make sure your clients sign a model release form from you. And we have kind of separate one-pager model release forms in the legal page shop if you don't already have a model release clause in your existing contract. So, that's always step one. I'm assuming here throughout this episode that you guys have model releases from your clients, okay? So overall, I really hope this episode helped open your eyes to a lot more into the importance of protecting your work product, your photographs. Why you also actually don't have to give your photos away complimentary, and fees do happen a lot in the industry. And also just knowing the boundaries that you need to put in place and why your work product also deserves to be compensated for, just like all these other vendors. Remember, in reverse roles, all the vendors asking you for free photos would likely charge you for their work product, right? So what is the TLP takeaway from today's episode? I listed a few, but I want you to remember again and again, as you encounter more legal sticky situations as a photographer, just remember that you've worked really hard on your business and your photographs are quite literally your bread and butter. So don't give away your hard-earned photos. Don't just do it without a licensing agreement in place. I don't care if you do it complimentary. I don't care if you do it for a small fee. I don't care if you do it for a really, really large fee. No matter the case, you need everyone who has access to your photos that is a business and is using them for commercial purposes, whether that's just on social media and just on their website, or whether it's for other marketing avenues that they may take. They can't do so without a licensing agreement in place. Again, usually non-exclusive licensing agreements. And if you don't have a licensing agreement, you know that I am here to help. You can easily use our TLP template non-exclusive licensing agreements or exclusive licensing agreements. And you want to do this, I promise you. So to find these two products, head over to thelegalpage.com/licensing, all lowercase. Again, that's thelegalpage.com/licensing. I really hope you enjoyed this episode and you have now understood all of the steps that your business needs to take in order to protect yourself from copyright infringement by utilizing licensing agreements the right way and giving photos to your vendors the right way. If you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to me. The best place to find me is the Legal Page community on Facebook. And I will chat with you all in the next episode. Thank you so much for listening to the Legal Page podcast. I am beyond grateful for you, which is why I want to give you a coffee or your favorite bevy on me. If you leave a 5-star rating and review for the Legal Page podcast on iTunes, screenshot the review and send it to me on Instagram at The Legal Page. That's The Legal Paige. I will send you a Starbucks gift card from me. Just make sure to include your email in the DM. So again, send a screenshot of the review to me on Instagram at The Legal Page, include your email address, and I will send you some Starbucks, because what better gift than caffeine for every business owner? Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Legal Page podcast. See, I told you being legally legit isn't so scary. Be sure to visit thelegalpage.com for all show notes. And it would be super awesome if you could head over to iTunes and leave a review. Last but not least, don't forget to join my free Facebook group for unlimited legal and biz Q&A. Chat soon, Legal Pagers.